It's me, your void. I'm Cold, and these are the best books of 2024. It's the end of a year, it's the beginning of a new one. We have to talk about the best rates that I had in 2024. Watch me mess this date up throughout the course of this video. Maybe we will start living in the future, maybe we'll start living in the past. Who knows? Certainly not me. So I had a bunch of really good reads this year, and I had a bunch of really bad reads this year. This is the good side of this video. All of the books I will be talking about in this video have received a 5-star rating from me for one reason or another, mostly because I felt entertained by them in some way, shape, form, sound, word. Starting with probably the last 5-star book that I had in 2024, Little Thieves by Margaret Owen. This is the favorite book of James, and he said, read it, read it, read it, read it, read it, and I was like, maybe at one point. And then Kirsty made it her Patreon book club pick, so I was like, I might as well, right? So I went and got the book. I read the book, and I fell in love with the book, just like James predicted. It is so good. I have talked about Little Thieves on my channel before. I have praised it on my channel before. I don't even know what else to say about this. In Little Thieves, we follow Vanya, who is, at the beginning of the book, abandoned by her mother because she apparently is a bad omen and brings nothing but bad luck. So her mom just yeets her into the arms of Death and Fortune in the middle of the forest, and Death and Fortune are like,
you are ours now.
And they become Vanya's godparents and they raise her. And then one day, Vanya is just, let's just say her household is kind of complicated, given that her parents are the gods, the goddesses of Death and Fortune. So she runs away, kind of, and becomes a thief. A very good one, apparently. And in this book specifically, we follow Vanya's exploit after she stole the identity of someone else and became a princess. And now she's pulling a little Robin Hood shtick where she's stealing from the rich and giving to the poor, namely herself, and that gets her in all kinds of troubles. With other gods, with other nobles, with a detective she is curious about. Kind of. It's a beautiful story, and it is actually inspired... I don't want to say it's inspired by German mythology, because German mythology is not really a thing, but at the same time it is. It's a whole convoluted thing that exists somewhere, I think. But as far as I am aware, this is based on what little German mythology there is, but it invents a lot of its own mythology. This is also apparently a retelling of the Goose Girl. I have never perceived the Goose Girl, so I cannot argue on that, but there is a certain fairy tale-esque vibe to it, specifically if you know German fairy tales. If you are familiar with the original Grimm's fairy tales, you can see where this is coming from. And as your resident German booktuber, I have to say, this makes sense. This makes sense all the way down to the way cities are built. Like, the city we are in predominantly is described in vivid detail. And as someone who has lived in old German cities, yeah. This legit, I could imagine this city we are in as basically being the last town I lived in, which was founded in 826. Let that sink in. I lived in a place that was that old. Technically it was even older because there was some Neolithic gravesite things going on the farmland, so like, people have been living there for over 2,000, 3,000 years. It fit perfectly into this setting. It's kind of grim, no pun intended, but it's not grim dark. It's just, it very much evokes the kind of gray feeling you have when you think medieval town in winter. That's the feeling you get from reading this book. And the fact that I have a feeling that is a color when reading this book tells you everything you need to know about this book. Or rather the quality of the descriptions and the writing and the feelings this thing can invoke. I'm rambling. Watch my other videos if you want even more rambling about this beautiful piece of literature. I can only recommend reading this. Also, footnote, it's incredibly queer! Confirmed demisexual representation in both main characters? Next up on the list of best reads of 2024, A Dowry of Blood by S.T. Gibson. I have so many very visceral feelings about this book. It's to die for. I am a sucker for very flowery descriptions of very brutal things, and this book does it perfectly. The way the writing in its romantic kind of way, and I'm not talking romantic as in romance, I'm talking romantic as in the style of art, like classics, Roman, Gothic, like that kind of stuff. That kind of romantic writing, but it describes the most toxic relationship I have ever read about, and making something so inherently ugly so pretty. That just does something to me, you know? That just does something to me. I mean, I'm a sucker for good prose any day of the week. That's why I love a lot of V. Schwab's work. That's why I fell in love with The Starless City. The Starless Sea. The only other time I read something that was this beautiful while displaying something this horrendous was Angels Before Men by Nicolas Raphael, which... that is a gut punch of a whole nother level. Can only recommend reading that book, but we're not talking about my favorites from years past, we're talking about my favorites from this year, last year, the recent history, and this one is right up there with them. It's so good. And I mean, I love me a good vampire story. I love me a good poly romance. Have You Met Me? But this does it to a level. This is also very much giving the feeling you get from the old original vampire texts, where it was like all about this very twisted way of love, this very twisted way of intimacy. Yes, to die for. For this one, I also have another video where I ramble on and on and on and on and on and on and on about it, so go and check that out, probably linked somewhere. Vampires! In the very same video, in which I ramble about A Dowry of Blood and how much I love it, I am also rambling about Butcher and Blackbird by Brynne Weaver. Not as much as I am rambling about Dowry of Blood, because I was supposed to read Leather and Lark in that one. I have rambled about Butcher and Blackbird before, because this is so fucking funny! This is so fucking funny! And we're talking about two serial killers who murder other serial killers and how they fall in love. It's so funny! It's so funny! I was prepared for not liking cookies and cream ice cream anymore. I was prepared to be weirded out by the cannibalism and the accidental cannibalism. Those weren't even the funniest parts of the book, man! And honestly, this has not ruined cookies and cream ice cream for me. This has ruined marriage proposals for me. This, and Leather and Lark, the follow-up one, has ruined marriage proposals for me because what the fuck? How can something this horrendous and gruesome be so fucking romantic? This is one of those books that deserves all the hype because it is hilarious, it is well written, it is well paced, it is well balanced, it is... yes. 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 The next one on the list of my very best reads of 2024 is The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet by Becky Chambers. This is one of those books that I got myself when I had the sudden urge to consume more sci-fi in the written way instead of just watching shows over and over and over and over and over and over again. So I picked up a bunch of books that were slapped on recommendation lists for sci-fi in space. This being one of them. I don't even know what I was expecting when I picked this up. I think I was expecting a bit more plot. Because technically, the plot in this is that we follow a woman, her name is Rosemary Harper, and she joins this new crew of the Wayfarer, and their job on the Wayfarer is to take the Wayfarer and punch a hole through space, travel between space and time and reality, and then punch another hole in another point in space, and they basically create a wormhole. They just like hole punch through the universe to make traveling for other ships faster. And they have a new very lucrative job, and usually you punch in and you punch out and it's done. But because of the nature of this job, they have to fly all the way to the small angry planet, punch a hole in space there, and then make their way back and punch the hole out or back into space at home. It's basically they do it, but they have to do it reverse, and there is technically like a war going on in the background and everything. There's a whole lot of drama going on in the background because we are just sitting on this ship and we see these people, these very different people because they're all different species. We just see them do what they do on the day-to-day basis, and it is just so nice and fun, and they have to pause for a fucking plane now. Okay, it's gone. You think there is a lot of action-packed sci-fi spacefaring plot going on when you hear about a crew that has to travel across the galaxy to punch a hole into the fabric of space, and there's a war going on, and there are all these different species, and they have to work together and work against each other, and what? No, you're just a fly on the wall in the life of these people while they have to spend a whole year hauling their asses from point A to point B so they can punch a hole through a wall. It doesn't sound like much, but it is so beautifully written. The dynamics between these people, they truly are a family on this ship. Rosemary shows up, and on day one, she's already a member of this family. Do these people know her? No. Does she know these people? No. Do any of them care? Also no. And they have their own personal things going on, and struggles and feelings, and don't get me wrong, there is drama connected to that plot. But it is way less about that than it is about the interpersonal connections forming and expanding throughout this year. It's just so well written. Also, Becky Chambers, props for creating all these different species and their cultures and how very different they work from each other just because they had very different circumstances of evolution and development. Brilliant world building on top of these very, very, very amazing character relationships. If you're looking for a plot, keep looking. But if you are looking for a found family, up to like 180% of what this can be, read this book. I don't think I have to talk a lot about the next book on this list, simply because at this point, everyone should know that I am the #1 fan of this author. I am, of course, talking about Brynne McClellan and Wrath of Empire, the second book in the Gods of Blood and Powder series, which is the second trilogy in the Powder Mage universe. That's a title like Daenerys Stormborn of House Targaryen, Mother of Dragons, Breaker of Chains, blah 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 blah. If you know me, you know I love me a Powder Mage novel. You know I love everything that comes out of Brynne McClellan's brain. I literally have a shrine for the man on my bookshelves. Do I need to say more? But yeah, in Wrath of Empire we follow characters we know from the first trilogy and that have survived until now, and we also follow some other characters, and they navigate through a country that isn't their own, mostly, and this country has been ravaged by sort of a civil war for a couple of years, and now there is an enemy force invading this country, claiming this is their native land, but this other nation has not been seen for like 100 years or more, and everyone was like, they have destroyed themselves in their own civil war like 100 years ago. But now, boom, plot twist, they have one of the strongest military forces on the planet. Whoops! And they invade this land, and they are looking specifically for a very specific artifact they want to find because they want to make a new god. And for that they need an artifact, and our heroes and heroines are like, we fought a god or two in the previous trilogy. We don't want that anymore. How about no? So they take this artifact and they run away, screaming and shooting across the country with it in book 2, and there is not much more I can say about the Powder Mage novels. I will only repeat what I have said countless times before. Reading these feels like coming home for me. I don't know why, but every time I pick up a Powder Mage novel, I just know I'm in for a good time and I feel at home and I feel cozy, which is a weird thing to say given that these stories are literally constant war. I don't care. I love these books. You can also kill someone with them if you throw them at them because they are big boys. I have also rambled about this book on multiple occasions previously, so just look around and enjoy, I guess. And the last book on this list is not the one I'm going to hold up because reasons I will get to in a second. That was a total surprise. That book I picked up once upon a time because someone said it's Flintlock fantasy, and I feel Flintlock fantasy, my favorite subgenre, is chronically underrepresented. There is not enough Flintlock fantasy out there in the world. We have some Django Wexler books you can't get your hands on anymore. We have Brian McClellan. Technically, the Second Era Mistborn is on that list as well, but we're not talking about that. And someone said that the Lightbringer series by Brent Weeks is Flintlock fantasy. Is it Flintlock fantasy? Jury's still out of that. I'm one book deep because the book that I have on my favorites list for 2024 is not, in fact, book 2, The Blinding Knife, but book 1, The Black Prism. I don't own the Black Prism physically, I only have book 2 and 3 physically in my hand, so you have to deal with this as a stand-in. I don't care, I make the rules here. Live with it. So in the Black Prism, we follow Gavin, who is the Prism, and he can control or use all 7? 8? All colors of the rainbow. Not because he's gay, but because he's super cool. And him being the Prism means he's technically like the highest military leader and the highest whatever the fuck. And he technically controls all the nations under the rainbow because every nation has like their own color. And he is technically the boss of them all. Technically. Now, in the first book, we also follow a boy. A tiny little boy named Kip, which is, by the way, Dutch for the word chicken, if anyone is interested. And we figure out that Kip is Gavin's son, and Gavin is slightly panicking about that fact because he wasn't aware that he had a son. And now he has to deal with that. But at the same time, he also has to deal with growing tensions between all of those nations, and they eventually go to war. Also, there is an uprising of a weird cult somewhere, and there's a lot of problems being thrown at Gavin at the same time, and he has to deal with all of them, and they are rather impactful on varying degrees. I fell in love with that book. For no reason! I love the magic system in the book. I love the characters in the book. It is clearly written by a white man writing high fantasy, but oh my god, I love that book. Don't even know why, but I did. I think that the strong point of that book, of these books, is in fact the magic system, because you take light and you can split it into its individual colors, and every color does its own thing. And I think that is so brilliant. And then you basically have like an avatar moment with the Prism. The Prism can use all of the colors. And you have like different people. Not everyone can just use them. You have to be specifically someone who can use them. And then you can only use one color. Sometimes there are people who can do 2. And in very rare cases there are people who can do 3. Even rarer are people who can do 4, but that is basically impossible, and everything above that is just immediately the Prism, and you only have one Prism per generation. Like, it's really basically Avatar, but with light instead of elements. I just love it. I don't even know why, but I love it. And there you have it. A stack of my favorite reads of 2024. Mind you, these are not all of my 5 stars of this year. These are just the creme de la creme. These are like the 5 stars among the 5 stars, and I just had an inherent need to talk about them. So I did, because again, I make the rules here, and you just have to live with it. The beautiful part is that a bunch of these are part of a series, so I can hold out hope for the next book in the series for each of them. Problem being they are part of a series, so it will take me forever to get to the next book in the series. But once I do, great things may await me. Right? If you made it to the end of this video, leave a thumbs up emoji in the comments down below, or just tell me what your favorite reads were of 2024. I think I never messed that one up throughout the video. I will see that in editing. But yeah, good books! See you in the next video. Bye!